What's going on, everyone? Talon here, and welcome to another build/review where we're going to be going over Songbird. Alright, so Songbird is a pretty fun character to play. There's probably a couple ways that you can build her. You can build her towards damage, or you can build her towards survivability, depending on what you want to use her for. So let's take a look at her gear real fast. Alright, so she's energy attack, so she's going to have energy attack or all attack. We have all defense, we have HP, and then we have crit damage. So I went with crit damage here because she's actually a character where you can use her regular attack or just her basic attack, and it's actually quite useful. So that's why I went with crit damage here to kind of help the DPS with that attack, because that's actually going to be one of the main sources of her damage. And let's see here. So now we'll go ahead and look at our obelisk. I have not done much with her obelisk. All I did is equip a crit rate obelisk here just because I wanted to get her crit rate and crit damage up really high just to see how much it really affects her basic attack. So that's kind of why I went with this for the obelisk, but definitely you're going to want to change this out depending on how you want to build the character. So, as I was saying, the two different ways that you want to build her are going to be either towards if you want to do kind of like manually playing content such as World Boss and Shadowlands, and then there you can actually build her towards kind of Alliance Conquest or AI controlled, because she's actually a pretty good character for Alliance Conquest just because of the skill that she starts off with. She starts off with her second skill. I believe it was her second skill. Let's take a look at her skills here. Yeah, it starts off with the second skill here, the Sonic Flash, and actually can snare or bind the opponents right away, so that gives you a clear advantage right there if you're using Songbird, because then the other two characters that you pair with her can either finish them off, or Songbird can do pretty respectable damage as well if she does her Sonic Armory attack, because that actually does a lot of multi-hits and can keep them kind of stun locked, but not really because it doesn't actually stun them. So that's one way to build her, and if you're going to build her towards the Alliance Conquest way, the obelisk that you'd want to use is probably going to be something with either invincibility proc or a damage proc, just depending on how you want to build her, because a lot of people now in Alliance Conquest do have a lot of invincibility obelisk, so you can snare them, and then after that the snare will wear off, and then their invincibility obelisk will proc. The only good thing is her 2 and 1 skill here have really short cooldowns, so as you can see 7 seconds and 6 seconds, and that's without any skill cooldown being taken in effect here, so they're definitely really short cooldowns, so she could cast those really fast, but of course they won't affect someone that has a invincibility obelisk active at the time, so that can actually hurt her. So that's why if you have an invincibility obelisk, it can help her to survive through their invincibility obelisk. Or if you have the damage proc and they happen to not have a invincibility obelisk, you can pretty much one-shot them after you bind them, if you get that damage proc, that is. So that's kind of one way that you can look at building her. Another is if you're going to kind of go towards using her for World Boss and Shadowlands, you kind of want to help her DPS out a little bit, because her DPS is a little low. So that way you're going to definitely want to go with a damage proc on your obelisk. And then having crit rate is also really beneficial for her as well, since like I said, you're going to be using her basic attack quite a bit for those two game modes. So you definitely want to try to help amp up that damage, because let's see. For her details, as you can see right now, I have her crit rate up to 62%, her crit damage at 140%. So definitely you probably want to get around 50% for your crit rate if you can, and then your crit damage just pretty much as high as you can get it. If I work on this character more, I definitely would probably put some crit damage urus on her to help boost that up, because as she is right now, the main things that she is lacking is a little bit more crit damage and ignore defense. She could definitely use a lot more of that. Besides that, she has pretty good skill cooldown, so I don't need to work on that. Yeah, so those are going to be the main things that you want to look at for your character, for Songbird, and deciding on what you're going to want to use her for. And I do have experience playing her in Alliance Conquest against Doctor Strange, which actually was surprisingly well. She was able to snare or bind Doctor Strange before he was able to get a hit off, so that way none of my characters got time frozen, and I was able to take him out quite easily because I was actually out of debuff leaderships and out of debuff characters, so I didn't really know who I was going to use against Doctor Strange, and Songbird came through and managed to get that victory pretty easy. The Doctor Strange did not have a invincibility obelisk, so that's something to note. If you're planning on using her against Doctor Strange and they do have an invincibility obelisk, they're probably just going to have the invincibility obelisk proc and then time freeze you, and you might be out of luck there. But if they don't, she's definitely a very, very good counter to Doctor Strange, which is quite nice to have, considering a lot of people use Doctor Strange in Alliance Conquest. So now let's take a look at our Isolate set. So I have Hawk's Eye here, so she's definitely going to want a damage Isolate set, no matter which way you build her, in my opinion. You could argue to go with a recovery, and then use the obelisk to have either recovery with invincibility or recovery with damage proc, which can work out well, but I just like the damage here, so definitely it's up to you which one you would go with, because it synchronizes well with her Sonic Shield, because that gives her the 8 guard hits, so when you're manually playing her, you don't really have to worry too much about getting hit because you do have that guard. So she's pretty tanky because of that, or she has really high survivability because of the shield. So those are a few things to look at when deciding what you want to do with your Songbird. So now that we've gone over that, let's just go ahead and get in a little bit of gameplay. I'm just going to take her against World Boss real fast and kind of show you the strategy for fighting World Boss and Shadowland stages. Alright, so here we are at World Boss. We have Corvus as today's World Boss, and I'm just going to go ahead and use this team here because we get a little extra crit damage and crit rate, so I just wanted to stack that up, and then we're going to use Bullseye's leadership for the ignore dodge because we do have Corvus today. Besides that, if you're doing leadership, like I said, she's energy-based attack, but her actual damage itself when she's dealing it to the enemy is physical, so that is something to pay attention to. Only one of her skills actually does energy damage, all the others actually come out as physical damage. So let's go ahead and just use all ignore dodge strikers with one damage striker there, and bring her in here and see how she does. So pretty much if you have her shield up, you can just spam her normal attack here, and then you can use her 4th skill to get a little extra burst DPS in. That's pretty much how I like to play her, just make sure the shield's up and then just spam your normal attack when I'm fighting someone like a World Boss or someone in Shadowland. Of course, in Shadowland, I'm going to keep snaring them. I'm going to keep using the 2 and the 1 skill to make sure that they are stunned or bound the whole time. Alright, we got paralyzed there. Alright, so there we go. As you can see, a nice easy clear for Songbird. I wasn't even bothering to dodge a lot of his skills. I just had the shield up and then just went in. Most of the damage I took was from the bleed because that does go through the shield. But yeah, as you can see, her survivability is quite high. So she's definitely a strong character, and if you haven't already farmed for her in special missions, I would definitely recommend farming for her because she can be used in pretty much every game mode. Shadowlands, she's really good as a solo clear. She can handle pretty much any rally mode where she does damage or has the advantage, of course, for class, because she can just keep the enemy stunned or bound the whole time. And then you just pretty much spam your primary attack and throw in the fourth, and you can put up the shield if you need to, but in Shadowlands a lot of times I don't even use the shield. I just keep using the 4 and my primary attack, and then just make sure that I use the 1 and 2 skill, and it pretty much goes well from there. I mean, I haven't had any issues with her so far in Shadowland. World boss, she is able to beat all of the world bosses, but something to note is it's actually quite difficult to beat Black Dwarf, just because 1, his bleed, yes, can go through her shield, and 2, his physical defense is actually really high, so that means that her attacks being converted from energy to physical will do less damage, so it just makes the fight a lot longer. So you definitely want to make sure you really buff her up with the damage leadership and some damage strikers if you're going to try to use her against Black Dwarf. And then, of course, she's really good for Alliance Conquest as well, so that's another reason that you can build her up, because she's good even at Tier 1 for Alliance Conquest, because you basically just want her there to be able to stun the opponents, so that your other 2 characters that you bring in with her can pretty much finish the job. If she's Tier 2, she does do a lot more damage, and her skills last a little longer, so that's also can make her a really strong character for Alliance Conquest to almost solo a floor if you need her to, or a area if you need her to. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Alright, so that's going to be my build / review on Songbird. I hope you found it useful in deciding if you want to build up Songbird if you have not already, and deciding on how you want to build her for what game mode you decide to use her in. So that's going to be it for this video, and of course I will catch you in the next one.